Are you not entertained? Oh, my goodness. The Seahawks and the 49ers play a phenomenally interesting game. I'm not going to say it was a brilliant game. I'm not sure it was a brilliant game. Bunches of turnovers, all sorts of bizarre coaching decisions, missed field goals, turnovers in weird places. Just a strange game. There's 7 turnovers in this game. So I don't know if they played a good game, but they did play an entertaining one. Seattle comes out on top, 27-24. We missed that tie by just a smidge. I'm not going to lie to you. I wanted the tie. And I wanted the tie because I hate ties. Sometimes I talk about this when it comes to the Broncos, that you have to lose a battle to win the war sometimes. Since I hate ties in the NFL, kind of hope that a game that was getting this much attention, it was this entertaining, would end in a tie, and then that would embarrass the NFL into having to reconsider. But they got lucky. Seahawks get it done. San Francisco is no longer unbeaten. That was the NFL's last unbeaten team. And that NFC West gets very, very interesting. I mean, that game with so many guys missing, so many players hurt. The 49ers lost Emmanuel Sanders. They didn't have George Kittle. Jimmy Garoppolo was trying to get it done with Deebo Samuel and some guys. The Seahawks had one tight end, literally one, just one left by the end. Game had just about everything. Another phenomenal ending to another bizarre week in the NFL. Entertaining stuff in the NFL. Lots of close games, lots of results that nobody expected. Obviously, we'll go over that on a Reaction Monday and talk about the Broncos. The bye week is over, back to playing football. And the Denver Broncos are expected to have a new quarterback at practice tomorrow. That's right. Drew Lock is expected to practice. How much? I'll tell you next. The bye week's over. Oh, finally. Feels like that thing takes forever. Drew Lock will practice tomorrow. Don't know how much he's going to practice. Vic Fangio said it will be somewhat an abbreviated practice, get 25, 26 snaps in. Very few of those likely will go to Drew Lock. But almost a month later than they should have had him practicing, they have him practicing. Drew Lock could have been activated entirely on October 14th. The Broncos have kept him on the shelf for reasons known only to the Broncos, although we can surmise a couple of things. They really thought that they had a chance to make the playoffs. They thought that maybe Theo Riddick or Jake Butt would be more valuable to helping them win. Make of that what you will. But this is where they're at, and they are going to at least let him practice. Now, sort of a strange quote, and we'll hear a little bit from Coach Vic Fangio later, but basically said, what does he need when he's practicing to earn his time off the IR? Fangio said, good quarterback play, that he belongs. Sort of a strange thing to say. I would imagine that Drew Lock would probably like to see the football field since he hasn't all year. The Broncos, by the way, misread one particular situation. The truth of the matter is, without any question, 2020 is hindsight, but the Broncos should have put Bryce Callahan on the injured list, and then they should have left Drew Lock off of it so he could practice. It's what they should have done. Callahan has not done a thing this year for the Broncos since the first preseason game, and he still is in a situation where nobody knows if he will do much of anything. He's going to practice this week, but the Broncos are still discussing the possibility that he's going to be put on season-ending IR. So the Broncos have let this situation with Locke fester, and now, after trying to sort of hide it for a month, remember, could have been activated a month ago, just a couple days from a month ago, on October 14th. It's November 11th. They decided not to go that route. But the question there is, what is good quarterback play? What does that mean? Is he going to run the scout team like Brett Rippon did? And so Brett Rippon, I guess, on running the scout team proved that he belonged. So, I mean, I guess there's precedent there. Rippon is now the backup. Locke is the third string if he gets activated, right? Supposedly. So Brett Rippon apparently showed Vic Fangio good quarterback play. Showed Vic Fangio that he belonged while taking scout team reps. So I guess if you're Drew Lock, you can do that, right? I don't know if that's one of Fangio's weird motivational things that he does. I think in general, Fangio's done a pretty good job. Not elite. The Broncos are 3-6. But he's also not responsible for the composition of the roster all that much either. But this reminds me a little bit of what he's talking about with Von Miller. Constantly kind of runs down Von Miller, says he's not good enough. And it's the idea that he's pushing Von Miller to be the best he can be. Of course, the flip side to that argument is the argument that Von Miller is not trying to be the best he can be and then needs an extra motivation of someone to try to embarrass you publicly to be the best you can be. Well, some people do respond to that, I suppose, but a lot of people don't. I don't get the impression Von Miller really does. I don't know if Drew Lock will either. Drew Lock is probably more than a little bit confused. Medically ready to go a month ago. Could have been activated a month ago. Not being able to do anything but play on the virtual reality machine. So I would imagine that Drew Lock is already pretty confused about what the plan is, if there is one. The argument that Fangio's made also is that how Brandon Allen plays will make Drew Lock's IR decision for him to a certain extent. So if Brandon Allen happens to play well against the Vikings and the Bills, you, in a lost season, will not find out what your potential quarterback of the future can or can't do. That's a little weird. Little weird. It's becoming more and more evident to me that the Broncos picked Drew Lock because they liked him, because they were interested, because they think maybe he can do the job down the road. Elway and company basically followed him around all offseason, so you get an idea that he could probably do that. But I think the Broncos genuinely really thought, and I'll admit I'm a little surprised by this. I know there's the salesmanship involved, but I think they generally really did think that they were going to be a playoff team, which is bizarre to me. At no point in the Joe Flacco signing, in the free agency signing, in the draft, in any of the offseason, and right up to the preseason, did the Denver Broncos to me look like a playoff team by any stretch of the imagination at all. They didn't look like a team that was going to have a winning record, let alone make the playoffs at all. I never thought they'd have a winning record at any point. But the Broncos seem to have believed so. And it's different when, I understand, look, they have to sell tickets. They have to sell season ticket packages. They want to sell merch. They want to do all that stuff. So, yeah, I expect the teams to basically every year. Hey, I expect the Dolphins. You go down to Miami, I expect the all off season, the Dolphins would have been telling you, oh, absolutely. We got our new coach. We feel like we're going to really turn it around this year. They know they were basically tanking. They stripped the team down to the bolts. But of course they're going to tell the fans, yeah, we think we're right there. Because that's what teams do. They have something to sell you. And that's okay. That's the biz, right? But deep down inside, I think you understand making the moves that Miami made. You realize, okay, they knew they weren't going to be good. They're just selling you something. I think the Broncos really believed it. And so they didn't have a plan for Drew Lock. They didn't have a plan behind Joe Flacco. I think if Lock hadn't gotten hurt, they probably would have just let him be there as the backup. Would have been no different than Brandon Allen. But after he got hurt, they didn't really have a plan. Their plan, John always said it before, plan B. There's no plan B. We're going plan A. Said that most of a decade ago. I think that's the way the Broncos function. Plan A was they believed they were playoff contenders and they signed Joe Flacco. That was the plan. Period. I don't think if Joe Flacco had stayed healthy, Drew Lock would have maybe even played a game until the week 16 or week 17. Maybe. Only if the season had completely slipped away. I think the Broncos truly believed they were contenders. I think they truly believed that Joe Flacco was the answer. So when Drew Lock got hurt, they didn't really bother making a plan. Because they didn't think they had to worry about it. This was a playoff team, and they had their quarterback. That's scary. That's unnerving. Because the first step to fixing this team is to understand where the actual problems lie. And this isn't a Drew Lock needs to play now kind of situation. I've talked about that before, and I probably will again. But what concerns me here is the Broncos seemingly are unable to realistically look in the mirror and describe what they see. Be a fascinating week of practice. Start tomorrow, see what happens with Drew Lock. This is Brandon Allen's show until it's not. And that's fine. He should have started last week, and he earned another start with the way he played. But the leash should be very short. There's no track record to stand on. We'll take a look at this Minnesota team, how they've evolved over the week and the previous month or so. Get an idea of what this Broncos team can and cannot do against them next. The Broncos will take on the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. On Sunday, Brandon Allen will get the start. This is a Vikings team, by the way, that's good, okay? 7-3, that's already good by itself. But they've won 5 of their last 6. They were a last-second field goal away from beating Kansas City and winning 6 straight. During that span, by the way, and dramatically taken down by a mediocre performance and a 10-point win over Washington, they have scored an average of 29.6 points a game. That's what the Vikings have put up. I mention that because if you've been paying attention to the Denver Broncos, well, 29.6 points a game over the last 6 games, a grand total of 178 points. The Denver Broncos on the season have scored 149, 16.6 points a game. So, they've gotten over 20 just a couple times, including in their last outing. So, that's good. That's promising. But the Broncos have yet to reach a point total in a single game, not even once, that matches what the Vikings have done over their last 6. The Broncos have gotten to 24 points twice. They lost to the Jaguars with that score, and they beat the Browns with that score. You'll find out about Brandon Allen pretty quickly. Minnesota's defense, by the way, is not exactly a pushover either. They do have talent. The defense is maybe not as good as you would expect it to be. It's not as good as I expected it to be, given the talent on there. But Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes here, not chumps. Those are the starting corners. They're really, really good, folks. Passing defense, yardage-wise, they're just around in the middle. 241 yards surrendered per game. The Broncos, as we know, are far better than that. 202. But 241, it would still be a pretty significant outcome for the Broncos. When you talk about that kind of passing total. Brandon Allen probably had the best game any Broncos quarterback had this year. He threw for 193. 40% of those were on 2 plays. This is going to be a tough team to beat. They are among the league leader in interceptions. They're in the top. They're 7th in the league in interceptions right now as well. So I mean, they do a good job. It's not quite the Broncos' defense against the pass, but it's good. So Brandon Allen is going to have a much tougher time with Vikings D than he did with the Browns D. Let's be very, very clear here. It's night and day different. And when you're talking about the offense the Broncos will have to face, yikes. And the Broncos, again, they played well in their last win. No takeaway necessary. Nothing needed to take away. Broncos played well. They held the Browns to 19 points. That's pretty good. They held the Colts to 15 the week before that. They held the Chiefs to 6 before that. Or pardon me, the Chiefs had the 30, and then the Titans to 0 before that. So for the last 5 games for the Broncos, they've really held teams to low totals. They've been very good. But of late, this Minnesota offense has been nasty. It took them a while to get clicking, but they're clicking. And that's even without Adam Thielen, who's been a non-factor, has been injured. Missed the last couple games. or the vast majority of the last couple games at minimum. Stephon Diggs has gotten right. Dalvin Cook has already has 1,400 combined yards. He's basically the most dynamic back besides Christian McCaffrey in the league. He's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. He's got 10 touchdowns already. Kirk Cousins is completing passes at a 69% clip, and he has 18 touchdowns to 3 picks. So the Broncos, this is going to be a very tough game for them. I don't think they're going to win it. I don't think they're going to win too many of the ones that are left, quite frankly. And I don't think they're going to win more than one of their next 5. Not trying to be the bucket of cold water here. But when 4 of your next 5 games are on the road against teams that are a combined 24-11, let's be realistic. Some of the Broncos' injuries are going to come back to haunt them. Brandon Allen played very nicely against a bad team. That's not an insult. You don't pick who you get to play. You just play who's in front of you. But what will the Broncos do? What will their leash be? I'm guessing they will not activate Drew Lock for this game. It would stun me at this point. They're talking about starting a 3-week trial period to see if he, quote unquote, belongs. Which is interesting. When you look at the rest of the Broncos draft picks, which one of them hasn't really belonged? Guys that are undrafted. Brett Rippon proved they haven't belonged. Why? Why does Drew Lock have to prove he belongs in a different fashion than the other guys? I don't know. Said it before, I think the Broncos are running a bit scared here. There is some pressure. It's going to be the 3rd straight losing season for the Denver Broncos. The last time that happened were their first 3 years in the NFL. From 1970 to 72. So I suspect they're nervous. They don't want Drew Lock to come in and not look good. They know they don't have a very good line. They know he hasn't practiced. Of course, they've skipped out on a month of practice for him that they could have had. A month. So much like they did with Joe Flacco, they've now put all their eggs in the Brandon Allen basket. A guy who has exactly 20 more pass attempts in his career than Drew Lock. Hopefully it works out. Allen can do more in this offense than Joe Flacco did. So I think there's reasons to be optimistic there. I think there's some value, but has to play with fewer mistakes. Played pretty well, but you can't make the same kind of mistakes when it comes to your accuracy against the Vikings. They'll get picked. Like we do on Mondays. You know, you're sports fans. We're sports fans. We watch all of it, right? I mean, you know, I sit and watch my college football and everything. Nuggets, Avs, you name it. Love all of it. So every Monday we put together a segment called Weekend Warriors. Folks that we thought were the ones that stood out. We'll share those with you next. It is Monday, so we'd love to take a look back at the weekend. A lot of good performances this weekend. So before the show, Kevin Kistner, producer extraordinaire, we sit and we talk about guys that we watched, that we were impressed with, and we come up with 4 of them. Kevin, do you want to kick yours off?
Let's ring it. CBS Sports on the call, and I'm going to kick things off with Lamar Jackson going 15 of 17 in the air, 223 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 rushing with a perfect passer rating.
That is crazy, and Jackson actually getting that passer rating becomes the second quarterback to record a perfect passer rating in multiple games in one season. The only other quarterback that's ever done that, had 2 perfect passer rating games in a season, was Ben Roethlisberger back in 2007. So much for, seems a while back when people were wondering, well, could Lamar Jackson really convert to the NFL?
Is he going to be a receiver?
Yeah. How about, can the NFL adjust to Lamar Jackson?
Let me ask you this.
So far, the answer seems to be no.
Are the Ravens the best team in the AFC?
No.
Still the Patriots?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
That was Kyler Murray, of course. Fox Sports on that call. That was the bad part. The good part for Kyler Murray, though. 324 yards, 3 touchdowns. And boys, he's setting records left and right. 2,553 passing yards, 351 rushing yards in his first 10 starts. Only 4 quarterbacks have ever done that with 2,500 yards and 250 rushing yards. Dante Culpepper, Cam Newton, and Deshaun Watson. And then with Murray hitting Christian Kirk for 3 touchdowns, that was the first time since this date in 1962, the Minnesota Vikings quarterback Fran Tarkenton and Charlie Ferguson, 2 players under the age of 23 connected on 3 touchdowns in a single game, literally on this date, not yesterday when it happened. But we played that pick because Murray really had done very well before that. 211 consecutive passes without a pick, the pick you heard right there in the highlight, that passed Derek Carr and Dak Prescott, who had both had 176 for the longest streak of consecutive pass attempts without a pick for a rookie in NFL history.
That's impressive.
Not bad.
And I see, it makes me wonder if he went in the perfect situation in Arizona, because I don't know if he's in on another team away from Cliff Kingsbury where he's going to have this type of success.
Well, they literally built the team to work for him on this. I mean, they built it all around it. I mean, that's why they scrapped with Josh Rosen. And you know, the funny thing is, they're actually, it's not as if they're setting the world on fire with their record when they're 3-6-1, but they're close to being a little better than that. And this was a team that was hopeless. They're not hopeless anymore, and most of that's Kyler Murray.
Yeah, they're a lot better than I think a lot of people thought.
Yeah.
I mean, 3-6-1, a couple close games here and there, but they look pretty good.
They do.
And they got that Vance Joseph defense.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. But never mind. Bring it. Who's next?
My guy. Well, maybe not my guy, but Joe Burrow. He goes into Alabama and takes them down 31 of 39, 393 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
That was a crazy performance. And what a game, too, because it looked like LSU was going to run away with it.
Yeah.
It looked bizarre. I mean, I hadn't seen Bama that down before, and then they had to hang on. It ended up being a slugfest at the end. But Tagovailoa is still coming off. He had surgery, 20 days prior to the game, something crazy like that. But I do think that maybe in a lot of people's eyes, it's going to depend on the team. I think the people have watched Tagovailoa for so long that he's still going to be the number 1 guy. But it only takes a team or two that looks at it and say, no, that kind of performance, You keep doing that. You go play well in a bowl. It's not easy to go into Bama and throw for almost 400 yards and 3 touchdowns and no picks in a win.
Does this solidify him as the number one pick in the draft?
I don't know, but it probably puts him in the lead for the Heisman.
Now let me say this. He's from Ohio. Cincinnati Bengals have that number one pick right now.
Ooh, that's
a little
interesting
hometown story right there.
That would be an interesting idea. I like where your head is at. I like that.
Would you, if you were the Broncos, would you want to maybe trade up for him, try to go after him, or if he's just sitting there?
If he's just sitting there, oh my gosh, yes.
Just some crazy
for some reason
he's
sitting around 10. Yeah,
you would pull the trigger.
Absolutely. He's not going to be anywhere near 10. He's not going to be anywhere near 3, let alone 10. That's not going to happen. Wow. Okay, ring it. Who's our top guy? That was our Burrow highlighting.
We just played that. I just wanted to play it one more time.
Yeah, it was that good. Altitude Television there. Cale Makar. 2 goals on Saturday against the Columbus Blue Jackets in their 4-2 win with the go-ahead goal in the second period. Makar, of course, it feels like he's been on the team for a while. And the crazy thing is you have to remember he was activated during the playoffs. The first regular season game he played this year was his first regular season game.
And he's still considered a quote-unquote rookie.
Okay, he is a rookie. He never played in a regular season game. He just played in the postseason. So he's just been every bit as advertised. And, I mean, in that game, as they're looking for guys to pick up the slack with McKinnon having to carry everything for Rantanen and Landeskog, they're trying to find secondary scoring. They've had it on this team this year. On that night, not so much. The 2 assists from Jost. But Makar, not only with the 2 goals to lead the team, but also 7 shots to lead the team. This is a guy that has some phenomenal offensive talent. You got used to watching Tyson Barrie and thinking that was a good offensive defenseman. Not like this guy. And this guy's just as good on the defensive end, too. Cale Makar is going to be really, really, really special if he's not already.
Great drafting by Joe Sakic. I mean, it's year after year he's sitting on these draft picks. I mean, my dad was saying maybe he should be drafting the Broncos players for us. just throwing that one out there, but
throw the names out there. He's been making the right moves in free agency too. In that game, Nassim Kadri got a goal and an assist. He's been really good too, and especially good on faceoff, something the Avs have been awful in over the last couple of years. So those are our weekend warriors. Lamar Jackson for his second perfect passer rating of the season. Kyler Murray for setting a new record for the longest streak with no interceptions for a rookie quarterback. Joe Burrow with his unreal performance in Alabama, go ahead and knocking off the Crimson Tide. And the Avs owned Cale Makar. 2 goals, getting them off a bit of a skid that they were in. And now the Avs all of a sudden look like they're sharp again. So those are our weekend warriors. I want to know what you think. You will go ahead and you can always send those to me on Twitter. That's SDrotar, SDROTAR. You can send them to Kevin. He's Kistner Radio. And if you had a couple you even wanted to bring up, you can reach out on the RamosLaw.com text line. That's 303-713-1043. Vic Fangio had some interesting things to say, as you would expect. The bye week is over. It's game week again. Vikings week. But also, there's no way to get around it. It will be the sort of re-debut of Drew Lock. So we'll hear from what the coach had to say next. It's also Veterans Day, so I want to wish a very happy Veterans Day to all those who have served. Thank you so much for your service and for everything that we get to enjoy. Thanks to your efforts. Very much appreciated. Going over to Dove Valley as the Broncos now start their preparation for the Minnesota Vikings. First road game for Brandon Allen as a starter on only the second start. Broncos should feel confident. They're getting a little healthier. Bryce Callahan is supposed to be able to practice. Drew Lock will get to start to practice. Over at the Broncos headquarters, Coach Vic Fangio had an opportunity to set the stage for this important week. And here's what he said. The Callahan part interests me a great deal. The idea that what we heard there is they're just going to see where he's at. Not that the expectation is to play this season. What does that mean? Did the Broncos make a major mistake there with Callahan? Did they misread it medically? Did they find themselves maneuvering personnel on the IR that they never even needed to? Talk about that next. As the Broncos get back to work, Drew Lock will take center stage in many ways. That's a difficult spot for Brandon Allen, who's the starter. But let's face it, Drew Lock is going to be the focus, and he's going to be the focus from now until he plays. The Broncos are going to get him going in practice tomorrow with an eye towards potentially activating him from the IR. And I wonder a little bit, as there are other players involved. Juwan James, they hope to practice. Who knows where it stands with him. Bryce Callahan, he said, will return to practice. But with Callahan, they're admittedly said they're just trying to find out where he is, not necessarily getting him in a spot where he can play. Callahan should have been the one put on the IR, not Drew Lock. That would have helped avoid a lot of this situation. As Vic Fangio said, he hasn't been able to take snaps since August. Well, he could have been taking them in October. Could have been taking them for a month now. But the Broncos chose not to do it. It was their call. It was their decision. They decided that's what they wanted to do. They thought that was the best thing to do with their young quarterback. But now they find themselves, and necessarily so, opening something of a Pandora's box. There is not going to be a way around this now. It's just that simple. Now that Drew Lock will be seen out on the field, he's going to be the story. This team is, look, let's say they go in and win at Minnesota. Great. They're 4-6. Okay. Great. Drew Lock's going to be the story until he starts a game for the Denver Broncos, period. That's it. That's it. He's the story. When number 3 is out there on the practice field, he will be the story for this team until he starts. No matter what Brandon Allen does, this is what it's like when you're the backup quarterback for the Denver Broncos. I've said it before, only partially tongue-in-cheek. Being the backup quarterback for the Broncos is the best job in Colorado. Period. Just is. It's the best gig in town. It's better than being governor. Everybody loves you. Everybody wants to see you. Brandon Allen got to enjoy that. And everyone was hyped to see him against the Browns. People were going crazy excited to see him against the Browns. And then he played well. And I literally get texts on the RamosLaw.com text line, which is 303-713-1043, that he might be the next Tom Brady because he was also drafted in the 6th round. I mean, this is where it goes. It gets crazy. People love the backup quarterbacks. Now, haven't quite heard the hype for Brett Rippon yet, but it's only been a week. He's also a rookie, but not the one with the same pedigree as Locke. So that's the difference. But the Broncos now are not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle. They were able to push this back a little bit. The way the Broncos had started, had Drew Lock not been hurt, we would have been talking about this a while back on when it was time to bench Joe Flacco and go to Drew Lock. That would have been something we would have been discussing. I guarantee you. There's no question in my mind, and it would have been pretty early on. The Broncos had a 4-game losing streak to start the season. You don't think that would have been part of it? You bet it was. Joe Flacco had 5 interceptions and fumbled 8 times. Would have been having this discussion long before then. So they were fortunate they were able to basically kick it down the road a little bit because they spent so much money on Joe Flacco. And instead of having to embarrass the veteran by benching him potentially, the injury gave them an out. Very bad luck for Flacco. Certainly not great to have an injury, especially ruptured or at least herniated disc in your neck. Yuck. No, thank you. But it gave the Broncos a little bit of cover that they won't have going forward. Now that Drew Lock is ready to go, such as he is. I want to go to the phones and talk to John. John, how are you?
Hey, Sean, I'm good, brother. How are you, man?
I'm good.
Hey, so I missed a lot of what you said after I heard you phrase this question.
Mm-hmm.
Why did the Broncos should have put Bryce Callahan on IR instead of Drew Lock.
Yes.
So I heard you phrase that. I called in immediately. And I'd like to take the other side of that, if I may.
Sure.
That what you said, your opinion or your take on that, was contingent on what this team was going to do with Chris Harris, which was unknown knowledge prior to the trade deadline. Would you agree?
I don't think the Broncos really had any intention of trading Chris Harris. No, they had to be blown away.
Okay. Well, so you don't believe that, but if the Broncos 8 weeks ago, were going to trade Chris Harris, would you say it did not make sense to put Bryce on the IR and keep a healthy Flacco, keep Drew Lock on the IR opposed to Bryce if Flacco's healthy?
Well, yeah, I do, because with what we're talking about, and like I said, this was in hindsight, because the Broncos thought that given the injury in the preseason, that Callahan would have been out for a month. That's what they thought. They originally said 4 weeks. They said 4 to 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Fangio clarified and said it was supposed to be closer to 4 after he had a stem cell type of treatment. Now you're talking about way longer than that. And the Broncos have had no possible use for Callahan. He hasn't been able to practice. It sure would have helped Drew Lock to be able to practice, don't you think?
Well, and I think maybe I didn't make my point clear. No. So when Drew Lock in preseason week 3, post week 3, injured his thumb,
right,
and Callahan was benched, on the shelf in the icebox, trying to get him ready for week 1, then we knew it was a 4 to 6 week injury. But did Callahan not re-aggravate or re-injure himself, which caused this secondary delay?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm under the premise, or I'm operating or arguing under the premise that Callahan got re-injured.
Nope.
And wasn't ready to come back before week 6.
Nope. Didn't get re-injured. Just didn't respond the way they thought it was going to respond. Then had to have a special treatment again, trying to figure out why it hadn't responded, and it still hasn't responded.
Okay. That's a fair take. Second thing, earlier you said maybe one win in the next 5.
Yeah.
I've called in, or the last time I called in, I said before the season I hoped for 7 and 9. And I would just say I see 2 out of the next 5. I won't call which ones. Minnesota's a tough cookie coming up. There's extra meaning there with Kubiak leaving, Kirk Cousins not potentially spurning Denver, but not coming here, and we got Keenum. I don't know if it's Minnesota, but I see Chargers. I see the Bills. We have at Minnesota, at the Bills.
Right.
I think one of those 2 is winnable. I think more. I'll just say the Bills. I think Fangio's defensive prowess and the way we're playing on D. And this is before the Vikings game, post bye. But I think the Bills and then the Chargers again. I see at least 2 and 5, and we have to win 4 games out of the next 7 to be 7 and 9, which was my best hope. But
yeah.
I think we could be 7 and 9, which would be an overall detriment to the draft next year. But
right.
Just wanted to say that. Hey, thanks for taking the call, Sean.
Sure.
And I'll listen.
Yeah, appreciate it, John. Thank you. And you may be right. Look, if this week in the NFL showed us anything, it's that these games are pretty unpredictable, right? So if you're going to say that one of those 4 road games, Minnesota, Buffalo, Houston, KC, the Broncos just steal it because weird stuff happens, I buy it. I mean, I totally buy that. Absolutely. I mean, look at what happened just this week. The Browns end up beating the Bills. People didn't really have that. The Titans beat the Chiefs. Nobody had that. The Falcons smashed the Saints. I mean, they mopped the floor with them. Nobody had that. Dolphins go into Indy and win. I mean, this was a crazy week. So, yeah, could the Broncos steal one of those 4 on the road? They could. That wouldn't shock me. I'm not going to predict it, but it wouldn't shock me if they did, because it's just the nature of the NFL to go that route. So that wouldn't surprise me entirely. But then again, you win 2 out of the next 5 games. You're 5 and 9. Still want Brandon Allen starting if that's what you do? Broncos are going to have to make that call. It's Veterans Day. I have a fun and special time machine segment for you coming up next. Right, it's time for the time machine. Celebrating Veterans Day. I wanted to go back to November 11th, 1989. 30 years ago, in his fourth game as a professional, David Robinson, as a rookie after finishing his service with the Navy. He was a civil engineering officer, by the way, at the Naval Submarine Base in Georgia. First overall pick in the 87 draft. Had to wait until 1989, pardon me, till he could play. So Robinson, in that fourth game of the year, which was November 11th, put up 28 points and 11 boards on 10-7 shooting to lead the Spurs to a 122-108 win over the visiting Denver Nuggets. David Robinson obviously had a phenomenal career. Robinson went on to have one of the best careers of all time. But early that rookie year for the Spurs, looked ready to go from the get-go. Started his career with those 4 straight double-doubles, lost it the next game. But then, of course, went on to be a 10-time All-Star, the MVP in 95, NBA champion twice, 2-time Olympic gold medal winner, member of the Dream Team, and, of course, prior to that, 2-time Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame inductee, not only for his individual career, but also for the Olympic team. And, of course, a veteran of the United States Navy and a member of the U.S. Naval Academy. So wanted to honor our veterans today, going back in time, looking at one of their own. Great David Robinson, the Admiral. This night, 30 years ago, his rookie season. I loved David Robinson. The Spurs were so good back then. Amazing. Prior to the Tim Duncan times. Whew. Good stuff, man. It's kind of fun digging through that and finding out that game 30 years ago was against the Nuggets. Fat Lever was 1 assist off from a triple-double. But, of course, the Nuggets lost by 16, so it didn't matter too much in that case. Vic Fangio was asked about what will happen with Drew Lock. And one of the things that I thought it was interesting he did not rule out, and I'll be honest, I expected him to rule it out, was the idea that would he be Brandon Allen's backup this week? I quite frankly expected Fangio to specifically and immediately say, no, that's not the plan. But that's not what he said. He had an opportunity to rule it out, and he didn't rule it out, which I found rather fascinating, to be honest with you. And I wonder what that means over the course of the week. We will have to see. So they're going to try to get him as many snaps as they can this week. Obviously, a lot of that's going to be scout team. Understandable. So it will be a fascinating week. And as I talked about there, the other injuries, of course, Jawan James, he said it was up in the air. They'll see. Bryce Callahan, they'll try to practice tomorrow. But this is now a different phase of the season for the Broncos. All the strange results that happened this week, and they were strange. I mean, this was weird. If you're part of the fan football pick'em on 1043thefan.com, you would know how weird it was. By the way, you can still actually sign up for that. It's week to week to give weekly prizes, so you can still hop in there. But if you were to take a look at what happened this week among the picks among the staff, I mean, it was just a disaster. I mean, everybody messed up. Nobody saw these things coming. And if you think that maybe that would help the Broncos with a lot of teams that weren't supposed to lose, losing. The problem for the Broncos is it really didn't. They're in 12th place in the AFC. They are tied record-wise with the Browns, but of course they hold the head-to-head because they just beat them. But now to get up into the spot, you look at it, you say, okay, well, the number 6 seed right now is the Steelers. And the Raiders and Colts are tied at 5-4 with them. It's just a tiebreaker at the moment. Obviously, that'll look different by the end. So if you're a Broncos fan, you're thinking, well, they're only 2 games back. They should be going for the playoffs. But here's the trick. This is the kind of thing that happens in baseball all the time. Part of the problem for the Broncos is every single one of the other teams in their division are ahead of them. Due to the nature of the way the NFL schedules go together, of course, everybody plays everybody in their division twice. Well, all those teams ahead of them can't lose. It just can't happen because they're playing each other. So with the Broncos needing to leapfrog 6 teams to make the playoffs, it becomes almost impossible. It's not the number. It's not the fact you look at a team that 5-4 is in the playoffs. Broncos are 3-6. The Steelers just lose 2 and the Broncos win 2. They're right there. They're right in the playoff chase. It seems like it, but not really. Because the math doesn't really work that way. Because all these other teams can't all lose because they're playing one another. It just becomes nearly impossible to hop over all of these clubs. And a few of them ahead of you, on top of that, you don't have the tiebreaker over. The Minnesota game is important. The Buffalo game is even more important because they're a team holding a playoff spot. But the Broncos, basically, if they expect to jump all the way because of the nature of the divisional schedule, the Broncos basically have to win out to have a chance at the playoffs. And that's not going to happen. Let's be realistic. I don't care if that's Brandon Allen starting or Drew Lock starting or Brett Rippon starting. The ghost of Johnny Unitas starting. They're not going to win out. So it felt maybe for Broncos fans there was a little bit of hope there with all these teams that were up in the standings losing. That might be good. The truth of the matter is a team like the Titans beating the Chiefs, that was actually bad for the Broncos. Because it elevated the Titans now that you have to jump over. So it's a little counterintuitive, but that's just how the math works. Those kind of situations, that's how it changed. For the Broncos to be able to make a jump, they needed to have a bunch of haves and have-nots that they could hop over. Now they don't. Now there's this big, mushy middle of Pittsburgh and Oakland and Indy and Tennessee and Jacksonville, and they're all ahead of the Broncos. So that's why, if you thought the Drew Lock story was interesting before, just wait. It's just getting started. Maybe you're ready for it. I don't know if the Broncos are. The Broncos have maybe created something that they can't control. What does that mean for the team? That and our stat of the night coming up next. Drew Lock returns to practice tomorrow. Brandon Allen is the starter. Brett Rippon is the backup, but the guy that everyone will be talking about is number 3. Broncos' second-round draft pick, guy that they followed around a lot of last year, coached the Senior Bowl, clearly wanted, and at one point John Elway referred to as a guy they thought might be the future of the position. Drew Lock, the idea that the Broncos had given up on him already. Some people had talked about that. That was always a bit silly. If the Broncos gave up on their second-round pick already, while he couldn't practice, because he wasn't doing well at the VR machine, I mean, just call the whole thing off. That would be ridiculous. Broncos have not given up on Drew Lock. The Broncos simply thought that they were going to be contenders with Joe Flacco. And they didn't really get much further than that in the plans. So that's where they are. And now they have to deal with the fact you have 3 quarterbacks. One is a third-year guy that's a journeyman. He's had 1 game. He's thrown 20 passes, and he did well. I don't think he set the world on fire with a 60% completion percentage. 40% of the yards were on 2 plays. His QBR rating was 41.1. Joe Flacco's for the season was 48.4. But he was good enough, and he deserves to start again. That's fine. Your backup quarterback is an undrafted college free agent. He's a rookie. And the guy that's coming back to practice is your second-round pick and a player that coming into the draft, a great many draft deservers thought would be a first-rounder. You're on a team that's losing badly, 3-6, on pace for their 3rd straight losing season for the first time in nearly 50 years. Yeah, this is all going to be about Drew Lock. And the Broncos now, they're not. This is a Pandora's box for him here. You can't close it now. Second he hits that field, he's the story. And he should be the story. The Broncos know what they have everywhere else, except in Bryce Callahan. They know what they have. And I've talked about it before. The most important thing this team can do is get clarity. So you can go in clear-eyed into the offseason understanding where you need to improve. When they decided to make the switches to Alexander Johnson, that was the kind of move I'm talking about. You weren't getting the production you needed. You decided to try somebody new. And now you know that, okay, you know what? You might have an inside linebacker here. You don't have to be scrambling for one in free agency now. All right, you can find some guys to augment the position, but you don't need to reinvent it. To not find that out at the quarterback position, that's just irresponsible. So the Broncos have to do this. They need to do this. They should want to do this. They haven't wanted to do this, but he's going to be out there tomorrow. And he's going to be the story. The Broncos had better be ready for it. Maybe a Monday, and maybe, everyone hates Mondays for obvious reasons. Not the weekend. You have to go back to work. It's not fun. Seems like everything takes longer. Blech, right? Well, your Monday was probably better than a couple guys in the Mavericks-Celtics game this evening. That's our stat of the night. Kristaps Porzingis for Dallas shot 1 for 11 in 20 minutes. Get 4 points as the Mavericks lost to the Celtics 106-116 tonight. But that wasn't the number. The number was Jason Tatum, who's played 35 minutes and shot 1 for 18. Not only is that the second worst shooting percentage by any Celtic over the last 65 years. 65 years. It's also the second worst shooting percentage by any player on any team in a win over the last 65 years. Jason Tatum shot 6% from the field tonight. 6. And you're figuring, oh, okay, he was throwing up a lot of three. Nope, 3. 0 for 3 from three-point range. He missed, one. Yeesh. Missed 14 of 15 shots from in the paint. And the one he made was a rebound that he put up for a layup. Yikes. I guess, if you're Porzingis, though, you feel lousy because your team lost. You went 1 for 11. You could have arguably say I cost the team that win that night. If you're Jason Tatum, I guess the bright side is you're like, whoo, wow, that was bad. Thanks for picking me up, fellas. Because Kemba Walker had 29. Jaylen Brown had 25. So get it done. But Tatum and Porzingis tonight, a combined 2 for 29. That is what Kevin Kistner and I would go in an NBA game. 2 for 29.
I'd be launching threes.
Well, I think we'd get 2 because they would probably just not guard us at all.
Yes. That's a good one.
They'd be like, if he hits it, he hits it, whatever. They just wouldn't, they're not even going to guard it. They're not going to guard us.
We might not even get the ball.
Right. You shouldn't, really.
Yeah.
To be fair, shouldn't get the ball.
We could cherry pick.
Yeah.
Sit at half court.
They still wouldn't pass it down there. They're like, he's not going to catch it.
Or Jokic would toss one to us, no looking.
Yeah.
And we'd have no idea that it's coming.
Right. It'd probably break my nose in the face because I wouldn't know it was coming. Yep.
But if you go,
I think I could go. Not in an NBA game with NBA guys defending me, I guess. But 1 for 18.
You'll get lucky with one. Shot.
Something's got to bounce in, right? Wow, that's bad. Woof. That's rough. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Obviously, following that really entertaining. I don't know if it was a good game or a bad game. Here's the thing. I think secretly it was bad. There were 7 turnovers. I think it was a bad game, but it was a fun game. Just not all that well played. The bye week is over, Broncos fans. In good shape there. We can start getting into the Broncos and Vikings all week. Big game for the Broncos. Big game for Brandon Allen and a big week for Drew Lock. The Broncos down at Dove Valley may not have any idea what's about to hit them. Hurricane Drew, whether they want it or not. Thanks again. It is Veterans Day. I want to take a moment again to thank everyone who has served. Obviously, we value all the freedoms we enjoy here have been built on the shoulders of those who have stood before us who have served us as now overseas. I know we have listeners that are overseas that listen on the app, that listen on the web. Thank you so much for your service. Appreciate everything that you do, and we don't forget about it, even though that this particular day is one that we single out for all of you. So thank you so much for your service, everyone here in this program and everyone at The Fan feels the exact same way. Thank you so much, and very, very happy Veterans Day. We'll hand it over to our friends at Sports Center all night. They'll take you through the rest of the evening, and then, hey, we'll be back tomorrow. Same time. Same channel. This is The Fan Late Night. My name is Sean Drotar. This is, of course, the one and only Denver Sports Radio, 104.3 The Fan.